There are places the maps acknowledge, but history avoids, paths that vanish, lights that whisper warnings carve in rock and ice. These aren't legends, they're real locations, documented vanishings, physical remains. Some call them unsolved, others say forbidden. So now, are you ready? Get comfortable, take a deep breath, hold your pillow tight, because now you're about to uncover a marked mystery: the cave that breathed fire, the cave that breathed fire. Not all caves hold. Echo some breathe hidden beneath the thick pine canopy of Fort Pinchot National Forest, near the isolated edge of Trout Lake, Washington, lies a cave long forgotten by maps, but not by memory. A cave that once exhaled fire. In the summer of 1989, three hikers were exploring a ravine near Trout Lake when they noticed heat shimmering above a rock outcrop. When they approached, the ground was hot to the touch. From a jagged slit in the rock, superheated air escaped in pulses dry, sulfurous and loud like steam. Under pressure, snow that remained in shaded crevices nearby had melted into boiling puddles. Thinking they had stumbled across a volcanic vent, they photographed the site, marked its location, and left. But when they returned 2 weeks later with a park ranger, the heat was gone. No air, no sound, just cold stone, and no record of geothermal activity in the area. Washington State is home to volcanic giants like Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier, but Trout Lake sits far outside any known volcanic zone. A geologist from the University of Washington examined the hikers' film and concluded it was likely a localized gas expulsion from decomposing subterranean organic matter, but no methane source was ever found, no fault lines, no geological event that could explain a 140 degrees air current blasting from inside a cold granite formation. The case was quietly shelved in late spring of 1992. A private research team, 3 students and 2 freelance spelunkers, returned to Trout Lake to explore the area in depth. They located the crevice again. Using topographic overlays and early GPS equipment, the cave this time was partially open. It extended into the earth at an angle, dark and dry, roughly 2 feet wide. The team descended in pairs. According to the 2 who emerged later, they made it nearly 180 feet, and before something changed. One described it as a sudden pulse, like the mountain exhaled, and the walls became warm. Then the air changed. Radios cut out there. LED lights dimmed despite full charge. One member began vomiting uncontrollably. The other suffered burns to his hands and face. The last 3 never came out. After 14 hours of silence, rescue was attempted, but no body, rope, or equipment was ever recovered. Within 2 weeks, the crevice naturally collapsed after a minor landslide triggered by heavy rain. Geologists noted it as unstable terrain shift due to erosion, but according to one leaked email from a local official, military satellites were repositioned over the region within 48 hours of the incident. An unnamed source inside the Forest Service claimed they were instructed not to speak to press and that containment was a priority. No agency ever took public responsibility. In 1996, a pair of hikers claimed to have found heat scars on nearby trees, aged rings, showing signs of cellular degradation similar to radiation exposure. No follow-up testing was done. Locals now avoid the area. The trail leading to the former crevice has overgrown, and park maps have no mention of the site. In 2003, one of the surviving spelunkers from the 92 incident died of aggressive lymphoma. The second refuses to give interviews to this day. His final public statement: "There's something beneath that rock, and whatever it is it breathes." A cave with no volcanic origin, a breath of fire from cold stone, and 3 people gone without a sound. But 400 m south in a stretch of Arizona desert, another anomaly appears, this time not underground, but on radar. The Phantom Town on radar. There's a town in the desert. You can't find it by foot. You can't drive to it, but when you fly over it, it's there. For nearly 50 years, a patch of the Arizona desert has returned signals of a fully functioning settlement, complete with movement grids and heat signatures. But on the ground, it's nothing but sand. Locals call it the Phantom Town. In April 1972, a military training jet from Davis Mountain Air Force Base reported unusual radar feedback in the Sonora Desert. The onboard radar briefly registered straight-line grid patterns, reflective surfaces, dynamic blips interpreted as moving vehicles. But when the pilot looked down, no buildings, no movement, nothing but open desert. When he circled back, the signal was gone. By the 2000s, the anomaly had occurred dozens of times including on civilian flights. In 2003, the FAA quietly dispatched a team with portable radar and satellite overlays. Over 3 nights, the radar registered consistent returns from the same area, again suggesting grid-aligned objects, regular pulse intervals, non-natural symmetry. But physically, the zone showed no change. Flat Earth course, sand, no structures. A leaked FAA memo later described it as persistent phantom returns not consistent with known mirage phenomena. Reflection source unidentified. Repeats with seasonal pattern. In July 2011, a thermal imaging satellite run by a private tech firm captured something strange. A heat map over the desert showed rectangular forms and elevated temperature zones suggesting occupied dwellings, roads absorbing sunlight, internal activity. But within 24 hours, a second pass revealed nothing. The heat signature was gone, no residue, no matching topography. The coordinates were erased from the open source database. A week later, indigenous Tohono O'odham elders have long spoken of a town that was scorched by time and place, where the sun forgot the people. Stories tell of a settlement erased not by wind or fire, but by memory being taken. Rituals forbid walking that region at night. Some believe the town was real and that what's left is an imprint echoing across time or dimensions. In 2017, an anonymous retired aerospace engineer gave an interview to an underground journal. He claimed to have worked on signal mirroring tech in the desert during the 1980s. He described a classified program that bounced electromagnetic signatures off the Earth crust to create false positives, entire phantom towns for radar deception. When asked if the phantom town in Arizona was man-made, he answered, "Not ours, ours were messy. This one's clean, too clean. A ghost town seen only by machines, a settlement that heats then vanishes, and warnings older than asphalt. The desert holds no memories, but it keeps its reflections, and buried in Nevada's rocky hills lies a pit that hums as in swallows sound. The black pit of Ely, Nevada has its share of holes, mines, caves, test craters, but one hole whistles. Locals near Ely say the desert isn't empty, it's hungry, and for decades something just outside the map has been pulling people in and not giving them." Back in the fall of 1938, a prospector named George Winter wrote in his field journal about a dark sinkhole northeast of Ely. He described it as perfectly round. The air smells coppery. There's a whistle like steam, but colder. He claimed to have dropped a stone into the pit and heard no impact. Local ranchers dismissed his story until Winter disappeared the next spring. His body was never found, but in his abandoned shack, searchers found one note, barely legible: "Don't let the wind fool you, it's not wind." In July 1952, 2 high school students from nearby, Ruth, Nevada, Tommy Blake, and Eric Danners, went hiking in the same area. Winter had mentioned they never returned. A week-long search operation was launched. Helicopters spotted a perfect circular depression in the earth, roughly 12 feet across. But when ground crews arrived, there was no hole, just dirt, no sign of excavation or collapse. The official report listed them as lost in wilderness. Their footprints led toward the center of where the hole had been and then stopped. In 1978, a BLM survey team conducting mineral mapping in the area recorded low-frequency ground vibrations coming from a precise location. One described the sound as like a machine idling beneath a sheet of metal. Seismic readings showed no tectonic activity, no fault line, just an unexplained rhythmic hum peaking every 11 minutes. The reading persisted for 36 hours, then stopped. The file was marked environmental anomaly, non-reproducible. In 2009, a group of amateur cavers and drone operators used satellite overlays and journal fragments to triangulate what they believed was the original pit site. They located a strange depression partially obscured by brush. In time, the team dropped equipment down the shaft, drones, ropes, recorders. Within 30 minutes, all electronics failed, communications cut. One member suffered acute vertigo and vomiting that night. A localized blackout affected the region for exactly 36 minutes, the same duration of the hum recorded in 1978. No explanation was ever given since 2010. The site has been fenced off and marked as geologically unstable. The state denies any ongoing monitoring, but satellite images show subtle shifts in the earth every 18 months, concentric depressions visible only with thermal overlays. Locals still whisper about the place, a rancher once said. Cattle avoided, dogs whine. And if you go close enough, the trees stop making noise. No insects, no wind. Just that feeling, that pressure in your ears like something under your feet. Is listening a prospector lost, 2 boys gone, and a hum that pulses on a schedule. Ellie's Pit doesn't exist on maps, but those who've stood near it say otherwise and far. North of here, on a frozen lake surrounded by trees, something screams from beneath the ice. The ice screams. The screaming lake of Minnesota. Cold hides many things. It slows decay, buries bones, and muffles sound. But in the winters of northern Minnesota, there's a lake where the silence breaks, a place where after dark the ice screams. Lake number 14 is a small remote lake tucked inside dense forest in Itasca County. Isolated, uninhabited locals rarely visit, especially in winter. In January 1967, a park ranger stationed nearby, Edward Halverson, filed an unusual report at approximately 2:48 a.m. He heard what he described as a female scream, long and high-pitched. It echoed across the lake from beneath the ice. The sound repeated 3 times that night. Halverson ruled out known wildlife. He returned the next night. The scream came again. In the early 1970s, Halverson's report drew attention from state wildlife biologists. They conducted audio surveys of the lake, expecting migratory animals or geoistical ice movement. Their conclusion: no matching frequency in known animal databases. Not a fox, not a bobcat. The scream had formant patterns resembling human distress calls. In 1974, an independent audio engineer visited the lake with analog recorders. He captured 5 instances of the scream over a 72-hour period. The sound was eventually submitted to the University of Minnesota's acoustic lab in 1976. The lab's verdict: inconclusive, human-like, but not human sound source submerged. In June 1976, the ranger station that held the original cassette burned to the ground. Investigators listed the cause as combustion due to faulty heating. The original tape, accompanying ranger logs, and Halverson's typewritten notes were all destroyed. Halverson himself retired weeks later. His last message to a colleague: there's something in that lake. It watches through the ice. The area was never reopened for study. The incident faded from official record. Locals today refer to Lake number 14 as Siren Lake. A few brave campers have stayed nearby in winter, and their accounts are eerily similar. Sudden silence of the forest, feeling of being observed, and after midnight a scream that comes from under the frozen surface. Indigenous Ojibwe oral history speaks of a spirit trapped beneath frozen water, condemned to cry out until heard. One elder called it a wound in the world. The ice doesn't seal it. In 2007, a university grad student named Hannah been attempted to replicate the old acoustic tests using digital gear. Her microphone was set 30 feet from the ice at 2:11 a.m. It recorded a sharp, high-pitched sound peaking at 6,000 hertz modulation, consistent with vocal effort. No footsteps, no wind, no animal movement. Before or after analysis confirmed it was not ice shifting. The waveform showed structure like language, without words. Hannah never returned to the site. She left her fieldwork unfinished. When asked why, she said, "The scream doesn't ask for help, it warrants." A voice beneath the ice, of fire that erased the record, and a warning no one can decipher. But west of here, across the plains and past the peaks of Wyoming, lies a ridge, and if you stare long enough into its rock walls, something stares back. The eyes at Shoshone Rim. The eyes at Shoshone Rim. Some places aren't haunted by ghosts, they're haunted by watchers. In the high desert of Wyoming, there's a stretch of ridge line known as Shoshone Rim. No towns nearby, no roads. Just dust outs and eyes. For 3 decades, hikers and hunters have returned with the same story. There were eyes in the rocks watching, blinking, and then gone. In July 1991, a wildlife photographer named Dennis Farrow was camped near the base of the rim, photographing migrating bighorn sheep. Just after sunset, he noticed what he thought were animal eyes reflecting back at him from the cliff face, but they were too high, perfectly still, and too human. He raised his lens. The eyes blinked, then vanished. He searched for an hour. No cave, no crevice, no sign of an animal. His final journal note: that night, something new. I was watching it. Watch back between 1992 and 2009. At least 17 separate sightings were filed with local ranger stations. Common details included eyes 6 to 8 feet above ground, apparent movement within solid rock, no heat signatures on FLIR, sudden feelings of dizziness or fear In 2004, a group of spelunkers attempted to examine a nearby crevice system. One member reportedly passed out after visual contact with what he described as a pair of lit eyes fixed inside the wall, not behind it in it. He never returned to caving again. In October 2010, a wildlife team testing night vision equipment near Shoshone Rim captured footage of two synchronized light reflections hovering motionless on the rock while the lights did not emit infrared, did not match any animal placement, moved in unison for 9 seconds, then blinked and disappeared. The footage was submitted to a regional wildlife office 3 days later. The footage and the camera that captured it were lost in storage. No copy remains. In August 2019, a veteran solo climber, Rebecca Mess, entered the Shoshone Rim Trail system for a 3-day exploration. She never came out. Search teams found her helmet and rope harness near a narrow ledge. Her helmet strap had been cleanly sliced, not torn, no animal prints, no tracks, no blood. Rangers sealed off the trail 2 weeks later, citing erosion and safety hazards. But satellite footage shows that NIDA Department of Interior drone was deployed over the rim, a model typically used for thermal and subsurface scanning. No findings were released. In 2022, an independent geologist used LiDAR imaging to examine the cliff face. The scan showed irregular cavities, internal fractures shaped like orbs, and localized magnetic anomalies centered on previous sighting spots. When asked what the formations were, he replied, "They're not natural, something formed them from the inside out." He refused to publish his full report. Eyes in the stone as signal, and the mountain screams beneath the ice, whispers in the desert, and fire from cold earth. These aren't fairy tales, they're places, coordinates, records, warnings. But the next mystery, that's up to you. Which story haunted you most? What state should we investigate next? Leave a comment, share a theory, or if you've seen something with your own eyes, we're listening, because this has been a marked mystery.